Today is March 14th, 2021. My name is Anthony Villanueva. I am interviewing Raul Mercado for the Latin Oral History Project, Voces of the Pandemic Project at the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies at Northern Illinois Universities. This project is in partnership with Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas. Please know, Mr. Mercado, that this interview will be placed in the Northern Illinois University libraries and shared with the Voces Oral History Center in Texas at Austin. If there's anything you don't wish to answer or talk about, just let me know. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. If you agree, say, yes, I agree. And if you don't agree, just say, no, I do not agree. Do you give the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Northern Illinois University libraries?
Yes.
Do you grant Northern Illinois University the rights, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Yes.
Do you agree to allow Northern Illinois universities to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes.
Do you grant the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies consent to share your interview and materials with Voices of Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for the inclusion in the Voices of the Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes.
Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at Benson?
Yes.
Right.
No. No.
Yeah, just say that. I'm going to read the question again.
Okay. Yes. Yes, please.
This is question number 5. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at the Benson Library?
No.
The last question. On occasion, the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies and Voices receive requests from journalists who wish to contact the interview subject. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone number or your email with journalists?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Start off, I want to ask you, when did you first learn or hear about COVID?
I think it must have been like December of 2019 when I started hearing about the reports that were happening coming out of China.
Okay.
And December 2019.
That's kind of early, and that's good that you were you concerned at that point about COVID reaching the mainland of the United States?
I wouldn't say it was a concern. It was a concern. I wasn't that much worried about it because I didn't know how bad. I mean, with everything that's been happening with other viruses and all these other things that have been happening throughout the globe over the course of my lifetime,
right.
I was hoping it wouldn't get too serious.
So your initial reaction was that you learned about it, but you weren't that concerned.
A little concerned, but not that much.
Okay. At what point did you start to take the pandemic more seriously?
In January of 2020, when it started to get really bad in China, I knew it was just a matter of time before it got to us. I mean, there was no. From my point of view, I saw that there was no way to get out of that it was just going to continue to spread.
So your level of concern dramatically increased at that point?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. At that point, did you take any precautions?
I not in January. I think it's more in February, where I think it may have been tail end of January, but in February I started taking more precautions.
At that point, did you start to purchase more of supplies for your home in case the quarantine was extended?
Yes, I'm laughing. It's not funny, but yes. And I was called overreactive by a number of people.
Okay,
But I started to buy some provisions that would last a little longer,
right.
uh, getting more water, just getting things that we needed.
Did you find any upsetting situations when you went to the supermarket that caused you to be concerned about? Like, I'm talking about hoarding.
Oh yeah, and I think that the hoarding probably started in late February or March. I don't quite recall. Most of 2020 for most of us has been a blur.
Right.
This is one day. It's like that movie. What is it? Uh,
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day. It's just uh, it's so. Uh, Actually, yes. In February, because I recall I had to take a trip in March to Chicago, which I did not want to take. But in February, I started buying things. I wouldn't say I was hoarding. I wasn't hoarding. I was just buying
Right.
vision, supplies,
Right.
things that I thought that we would need. And at that time, things were just getting scarce. There were
Right.
gloves, masks, uh, extra beans, extra rice, extra things that are not going to go bad. But
Right.
putting those in the garage. Yes.
And uh, where you live, uh, did your neighbors show similar concerns, or did you interact with them with your concerns?
Yeah, I interacted with some of the neighbors, but some neighbors are, it's gonna be okay, not a big deal. Most people that I dealt with at the time um, were not concerned at all.
No.
Yeah, it was like, hey, there was a little bit of concern, but they didn't really take it seriously or go after and
Okay.
and try to get supplies for their home.
And so let's move on to your experience, your personal experience with the COVID. Did you contract COVID?
Yes, I did.
What time of the year did you contract in 2020? When did you contract it?
It was about mid March.
Mid-March. That's early. What kind of symptoms did you experience?
Ooh, uh, just it felt a lot like bronchitis, tightness of chest, coughing,
Right.
uh, sleepy, lack of appetite, and all I did was just rest, sleep, and cough.
Did it affect any of your senses?
No, no, except for the brain fog. There's been a lot of brain fog.
Okay, because a lot of people experience loss of taste and loss of smell.
No, I didn't. I didn't notice any of that. And if it did happen, I wasn't aware of it. I guess it wasn't.
Right.
If it did happen, it wasn't to a degree where I noticed it.
Were you diagnosed? Or did you self-diagnose?
I was diagnosed.
Did you Were you quarantined? Were you hospitalized?
No, thank God I was not hospitalized. That was my main concern.
Okay, so you self-quarantined.
Yes.
And how did your wife uh, handle your quarantine? Did she take any special precautions?
Yeah, well, at the time, there wasn't too much information. So we both quarantined because we both knew that if one had it, the other one had it,
Right.
probably had it. But I think that most, because I went to Chicago
Right.
like a week earlier.
Right.
I'm not sure if I contracted it from Chicago, but my wife got sick while I was in Chicago for a week. So she was never diagnosed with COVID, but we're pretty certain that she had COVID.
Did she have similar symptoms as you?
Oh, she had worse symptoms
Really?
than them. And this is while I was gone. But by the time she got tested, she tested negative.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. What about other family members outside of your immediate family, other cousins or uncles, or did anybody else contract COVID?
Yeah, a cousin in Jersey City contracted COVID. I think it was this past year, in 2021. Uh, some nieces and nephews in Colorado and Texas also contracted it.
Do you know anybody that passed away from COVID?
Uh, Unfortunately, yes. A lot of people. It's at least every week or so. There's a number of people who are passing away. Friends.
From your network
Yeah.
of friends and family and stuff.
Yes.
Were any of them close to home?
Uh,
When I say close to home, I mean more emotional.
it, uh, no, no, they weren't really close family members, but there were some friends who were close. Yeah, I would say that were close to home. There have been a number of people who passed away, and we still don't know whether, people don't usually say, hey, they died of this or they died of that. So I'm assuming that they probably died of COVID, but there's some there. I can't verify that was it, but
Mhm.
under the circumstances.
What was their age range? Do you remember? Can you give me a baseline of their age range?
Oh my,
The youngest to the oldest?
people in their 20s to people in their 70s and the 80s, parents, grandparents, children. Just last week, a friend of ours, and you probably know them also, from the Hudson County, Jersey City area. His uncle passed away, and then the cousin passed away a couple of days later. You know about that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of, yes, it's hitting home, and although I didn't know these people, but because it's hurting people that we know. Yes, it, I'm gonna re-answer that question. Is yes, it's hitting home.
Yeah.
It's hitting. It's close
Did,
enough.
did did you did you suffer any bouts of depression thinking about this, or the loss of friends and family, the quarantine, or any of those things? Did they cause any mental downsizing, depression on your part?
You'd have to be a machine to answer in the negative. Okay.
Right.
Yes. I mean, I just can't see. I mean, usually when things happen, they happen to someone else, or they happen to you, and you can put them in a separate compartment.
Compartmentalize, yeah.
Yeah, and but you can't with this. This is what COVID has done to us, and I'm not just talking about you, me, my family. It's just the people around the globe. It's affected everyone. Yeah, there's some people who may deny that this thing is really happening, and maybe that's a good state of mind to be in.
Right.
At least you're not worried about it, and maybe not as depressed as those of us who realize, hey, this is a problem, and who's next?
Right.
Is it going to be you? Is it going to be me? Is it my mom, my dad, my cousin, my neighbor, my spouse, my children? It's
Now your parents are still in Puerto Rico.
and my mother's in Orlando, and my father's in Puerto Rico.
How is let's divide them up. In Puerto Rico, do you hear of similar seriousness of the COVID in Puerto Rico?
Yes, yes. My father's been sheltering, from
Right.
what I hear. Probably not as much as I've been sheltering, because I've seen some some images on social media. I'm like, wait a minute, that's a little bit too close and too many people in the place.
Right.
But he has been sheltering and limiting his access
Right.
to but I think for me, I've taken it a little bit more seriously, and so yeah, it's been troubling knowing that I can't go here, I can't go there. I'm trying to limit my exposure, but in Puerto Rico, it's happening, and people are dying there also. It's
How about in Orlando with your mom?
in Orlando. What it's my mom. Luckily, she spends a lot of time alone, and that's the way she pre-COVID. So my brother's been keeping her, you know,
Yeah,
keeping her safe.
right.
And but I'm concerned about my brother because he works in elder care facility.
Yeah.
He's a chaplain, and so he's dealing with this on a day-to-day basis.
Do your parents wear masks?
Uh, my father and his wife do wear masks. Yes, and my mom does also.
Okay,
From what I've heard, yes.
okay, okay. And how are you with the mask situation? Do you always wear a mask?
Not right now because I'm home,
Yeah, I know.
but
When you
but
go out, when you go out.
when I go out, yes, yes. I have masks in the car. I have masks in the house.
Just
And
just as a question, how many times have you gotten out of the car and then you had to come back to get the mask?
oh, that happened yesterday. But I wasn't. I was like 2 or 3 cars away, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, I got to go back.
Yeah.
But I know once I went somewhere and I walked all the way to the doors in the store, and I was like, oh, wait. So I had to walk all the way back.
Yeah.
But my wife has done it as careful as we are. My wife has walked a couple times into a store, and I haven't realized that she doesn't have a mask. And we walk into the store, she's like, I forgot my mask. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as careful as we are, sometimes we have these missteps.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the subconscious brain rebelling against the whole mask thing. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Let me ask you about the vaccine. Have you gotten the vaccine?
No, I'm scheduled to get the vaccine this coming Friday.
And your wife? She's going to get the
Uh,
vaccine?
yeah, she was able to get the vaccine through her employer in New York, so we had to drive into Jacob Javits to for her to get her 2 shots. It's almost 2 weeks since she got her second shot.
Did she have any reaction after the shot?
Oh yeah, she had a lot of pain on her arm.
Right.
She also suffered from a lot of fatigue for a number of days.
Mhm.
But overall, considering what could happen, I mean, it wasn't so bad.
All right. All right. Have any friends or family members shied away from visiting you because of COVID?
Uh,
Have you lost any friends?
I don't think because of my political views on COVID, or just
No,
because.
no. We'll get to your political views at the end. We'll get to, you'll have time to rant and vent at the end.
Okay. Yes, my daughter, my granddaughter, for instance, they came to visit a couple times, twice to be exact, over the course of the last year. And the first time it was still somewhere around. It was still nice weather last year. I forget what month they came in, but it's one of those. She came in with a friend and our granddaughter, and we sat in the backyard, and we socially distanced, and they were in one spot and we were in another spot. We ate, but we maintain our distance.
Okay.
And then the second time she came around, it was colder. That was a couple months ago, and they were in the car, and my wife and I talked to her right outside on the street,
Oh,
because I
okay.
think we had snow. I think, yeah, we did have snow in our backyard, like 4 or 5 feet of snow. So there was no way of having them come in.
Were any members of your, say, your grandchildren, were they affected by the schools closing down?
Well, I've had limited access to our granddaughter.
Okay,
I've spoken to her a couple times, and she's 10 years old. I mean, 11 years old.
okay.
So yes, it's affected her. To what extent, we don't know. But like the rest, like your earlier question, has it affected us? Affected me? Yeah, I would say it has.
When you were registering to get the vaccine, let me go back to the vaccine. Were you able to get through the first time, or did you have to repeatedly try to register for the vaccine?
Oh, this whole registration process has been I've had some choice words for it, and it starts with S, and it ends with show. Okay, it's been horrible.
Yeah.
And here I am, my wife and I both technically not challenged technically.
Right.
I mean, I do webinars for work on a regular basis. I'm on meetings, and I know my email. But this whole situation of people having to give an email and not being texted to provide
no response.
no response, and continually registering. I've registered in I don't know how many sites. It's been at least 7, 8, maybe 10. Because every time I heard about something, I'll register here, I'll register there, register with the state, register with the different hospitals that are giving it, and finally, I registered in one place, and so I get my COVID shot next Friday, but I have to travel over 120 miles to get to it.
Where are you going?
I'm going
Kansas?
From northern, yeah. I'm going from Passaic, New Jersey, to a mega site in Gloucester County, which is about 110. Yeah, 110 miles.
Get there early because they might say we ran out.
It's crazy. It is crazy, and I'm an older person, but I've got means. I've got I've got my faculties. I can drive. Mm-hmm. But what about those people who can't?
Right.
It's been horrendous, and I just I'm trying to I'm trying to keep this clean, but it's been horrible.
Let's talk a little bit about your work, your livelihood, your means of making income. Has it affected the bottom line in your income?
No, luckily I've for this year at least we're funded through a government entity, so it has not affected my income nor the income of my of the people that work for me, but it has affected the way that we do our work.
Your business. How many people work for you?
I have 4 people working for me.
Have they been affected by COVID?
Actually, one. Yes, they've been affected by COVID. Yes.
Yes, affected in terms of, did they contract it or did it limit their means of getting to work, or both?
Well, one of the things that I did real early, and this is as of early March last year, I saw what was coming. As I mentioned earlier, I was kind of keeping tabs on what was occurring, and I closed our offices on the 6th of March. which was probably about a week before everybody else closed their office. And we ended up, there was a conference that we went to in Chicago, which I really didn't want to go to, but I went there anyway because it was a work requirement. But we haven't been back to the office since the 6th. I asked my entire team to get their laptops, get everything they needed so that they could work remotely.
Okay. Okay. Great.
And we've been working remotely ever since.
Okay. So tell me, on the political side, on the federal level, how do you think the federal government handled the COVID pandemic?
There was nothing to handle. Nothing was happening. It was fake news, you know? So the federal government politicized a pandemic, and with grave consequences.
Right.
And it's added to this S show that I talked about earlier, and as a result, as of this week, over 530,000 people have died.
Right.
And so when you politicize an illness, a pandemic, or anything like this, and then it becomes political. So now it's a political thing to wear a mask, and so it's as we see globally. Instead of being a leader, we've been the laughing stock. And laughing stock, I'm not too worried about being embarrassed and being a laughing stock, but laughing stock with people continually dying. And we're talking about the people who have died, but we're not talking about those people who are long haulers and people who have other who now have heart disease and their lungs are damaged. I mean, nobody's talking about those numbers.
Right.
So yeah, the federal government failed us and the globe.
Right.
And I think things are shifting now with the new administration, but now the new administration has to catch up. And this has nothing to do with my political views of who I support or whatever. It's just obvious. It's just very obvious that there was a lack of leadership, and now this new leadership team has to pick up the slack, and hopefully they can make some things happen real fast.
What about the state of New Jersey? How did they handle it?
I'm going to limit my my input on that, but I think it could have been handled a lot better. And I'm not sure of whether the federal I think that on the federal side, if there would have been some leadership, maybe the states could have done a little better if they would have had some support. Mm-hmm. This is someone who's looking at it from the outside in, but we could have done better.
Can you give me one example of how the state failed the situation?
And again, I'm not sure that it's the state that's at fault, but I think this whole politicizing of the vaccine and who gets it first, and the states having to make a decision on who gets shots. The whole debacle on it's been horrible, and I don't know that there's anyone to blame.
Okay. All right.
But the state of New Jersey and other states could have done better, but maybe there was a lack of understanding and leadership from the federal side.
So, do you think this is going to be the new normal going forward, or do you think things will go back to normal the way they were pre-COVID?
I think that the new normal is what we're doing right now. I think for the longest time we always talked about, hey, we got to get together, we got to meet, and let's get together soon, and it never happened.
Yeah.
So I think that now we've discovered new ways of communicating and seeing each other.
Right.
I think these video calls are the new norm. Uh, Traveling from one side of the state to another to do business and to meet, that's changed. I think that uh, I don't think that we're going that we're not going back. We're moving forward. I mean, as a people, as a species, I think we all kind of evolve with situations that we're confronted with,
Mhm.
and I don't see us going back to the past. I think it's a new normal.
This is going to be the new normal. All right. Okay. Is there anything else you want to discuss throughout there?
Um, I'm gonna think about this after we're off the call and say, "Oh, I should have said this. Should have said that."
Well,
um,
you know that this will be available for your grandkids and your great grandkids to see years ahead, because this is going to be posted on YouTube. And uh, you know, when they ask what happened when grandpa had the COVID, they can go back and listen to their grandfather talk.
yeah, you know what? It's funny because when you first reached out to me, it's like, oh, this is gonna be on permanent record, and anything I say can be used against me. Okay, but uh, is it? But I had that
It's
thought.
a very benign type of conversation. I mean, what we try to elicit is your experiences and your feelings.
Well, but you're right, and what in talking to myself, yeah, I do talk to myself, and not always out loud, but I'm like, yeah, but don't be silly because this is going to be available for not just my grandchildren, but generations, moving forward. And the same way there were other pandemics before this time, uh, it would have been nice to hear about other people who suffered through the Spanish flu and all these other horrific things that have happened throughout history.
Yeah.
But now we have an opportunity to leave a stamp and
Yeah.
leave something. And this is not, huh?
No, this project is centered on the Hispanic experience, because it's so often forgotten. That's why we concentrate just on Hispanics.
I got you. I think that uh, these have been some horrible times, and it's been psychologically draining, mentally, physically draining. Being able to get health care, uh, especially for those who don't have the financial stability or even the insurance that some of us have. It's got to be horrible for those of us who have good insurance.
Mhm.
Uh, it's been tough getting to see medical providers
Mhm.
to to, to keep our health up.
Mhm.
Uh, but there's that digital divide that we've been talking about for many years, and now we've come to coming to dealing with this pandemic. And my concern has been that digital divide. I mean, we talked about the registration process and going from one website to another, having to put my email in and just waiting for something to happen. Right now, yes, I do have a meeting. I do have my shot scheduled for this coming Friday, but I still check to see if I can get a shot before then
Right.
somewhere closer.
Right.
Uh, but what happens with those people who don't have emails, who don't have a cell phone. And there's a lot of people in our community who have limited access to the internet. You ask them about an email. What is an email? My parents, for instance, if it wasn't for my brother in Orlando, and if it wasn't for the support system that my father has in Puerto Rico, I I don't know where they would be. Luckily, there are people there that can help them. Uh, it, but as we look at this, and eventually we will pass, this too will pass.
Right.
Uh, I I'm hoping and praying that we'll be able to survive this and become stronger. And next thing something like this happens, we have to be better prepared as a community. What do we do? I don't know what the answers are, but we have to prepare for situations like this that'll happen beyond this, because right now we're hopefully coming out of it in the next year or so. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. It's probably not going to happen in 2021, because there's so many. I think I'm rambling on. There's so many.
No. This is your time.
There's so many other countries that are suffering from this, and we're not a third world country, and we've been affected worse than some third world countries.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because we've been like omitting the fact of what's really been occurring. Right. Tratando de tapar el sol con la mano.
Yes.
And meanwhile, you're not using any anything to protect yourself, and it's hitting us. I think it's hitting us hard. But I think in the future, what do I say to my grandchildren, my children, my great grandchildren, is that be strong, prepare yourself for whatever's coming. I think oftentimes we just sit and wait for things to happen to us. Right. We cannot. Tony, you and I have been around for a while, but we know that we've tried as much as we try to prepare ourselves and to prepare our children and our family. Right. It's never ever enough. And just know that whether it's education, whether it's putting money aside, start saving now. So that when you get older like us, you don't have to continue to work, and so that you can be retired, and have the resources that you need to move along in life and to be able to make an impact with your family, with your neighbors and family, because it's not just about you and me. Right. It's about what you contribute to society. And I think we can do a lot more. But don't give up hope. I mean, things we've all suffered. We've all been through loss. We've all had to endure pain and suffering. But that's part of life. And, we just got to move forward.
Okay. I'm going to take this time to thank you for your contribution. And if there's anything else that comes to mind, contact me. We could always do an addendum to this. But thank you, and have a nice afternoon.